Do you get to introduce me?
I'll introduce you real quick.
Okay, great, thanks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next session for AAC in the Cloud. This session, we have Rachel Jones, who will be presenting on AAC in the classroom, and we will turn the time over to her.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for coming. That's really a thing. I am all for attending conferences in professional development, but when I can do it from my house, significantly better. I will tell you before we even get started that I am about 2 weeks into puppy mommyhood. So if you hear crunching in the background, it's not actually me. I'm not eating a snack, but I've bribed the dog with every treat in the house to sit still and be good for an hour. So he's getting some AAC instruction too. We are going to spend some time today talking about core vocabulary in the classroom. It looks like to integrate core vocabulary into the AAC users classroom. And so we're going to delve into a couple different areas and things around that topic. And so if you are not already, come hang out in the Track 1 chat room, and you can grab your questions, and we'll have some time for those at the end and touch and go as we can. Let me introduce myself just a little bit. I just finished my 4th year. I'm starting my 5th year as a school-based speech language pathologist. I work in a Title I high poverty elementary school, and currently my caseload is kindergarten through 5th grade. And in that, I'm in Indiana, and so in that, I have 3 self-contained classrooms for children with a variety of disabilities, a variety of eligibility areas, including but not limited to Down syndrome, Fragile X, mild, moderate, severe cognitive impairments, autism, of course, and just a whole host of other things. And so I have a gen ed kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms on my caseload, and then those 3 kindergarten through 5th grade self-contained programs as well. I also work part-time in pediatric outpatient rehab at a hospital here in my city. I do that mostly in the evenings and in the summer. Actually, as soon as I'm done here, I have to go work a little bit at the peds clinic, where I see a variety of kids birth to, I think my oldest kid right now is 13 or 14. Probably my favorite bullet on this list is I'm an AAC camp volunteer. And that is a really cool program that my undergraduate alma mater puts on every year. And that's actually, I could talk to you about this all day, but how I fell in love with AAC and realized that it's my very favorite thing in the whole world is we put on a weekend-long camp for AAC users of all ages and abilities and devices and communication methods. And they come to the college for a weekend, and they work all weekend long to use their communication modalities to put on a play for the community at the end of the camp. And the undergraduate AAC program kind of helps run that. And then the community comes out on Sunday night, and it's just the coolest experience ever. And so I started there as an undergrad student, and then I have been back every year since as a speech pathologist on the more technical side of things. And so I could talk to you about it all day long. It's the very best experience for everybody involved. And then I also am kind of all over the internet. I am a blogger, Teachers Pay Teachers creator, social media manager, crazy at Let's Talk Speech Therapy. And I have to tell you that I work there pretty much. And so I have a little bit of relationship with some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, but I'm just legally required to tell you that. Learning objectives for today, quick. I know you can read, so I'm going to try not to read slides at you today. We're going to talk about the importance of core vocabulary, which is not so much new information for you, and I know yesterday through some of the sessions we talked about, I know Ann Page talked a lot about this yesterday, as well as a variety of people. But I think it's a good refresher to be able to verbalize what we know. I sometimes find myself knowing what I know, but having a hard time explaining what it is. We're going to talk a little bit about collaborating with gen ed and special ed teachers. That's, I would easily say, 50% of getting AAC of any kind, let alone core vocabulary, into a child's classroom. Because I can pull out a student all day long and do some really awesome therapy and make some really good gains with some kids. And then when they go back into their classroom, their device or their textbook or their picture symbol set gets put in their backpack, and then they don't see it again until they see me again. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about collaborating with school staff and teachers, and then we'll talk about just a few lessons, activities, and supports to use in the classroom as well here at the very end, if I don't talk to you all day about my learning objectives. I want to start with this image. It's probably one of my favorite pictures on the internet, which I understand is a broad statement. And I was looking through my notes last night, and Rachel Langley presented yesterday at the beginning of the conference. So I had to have a little geek out moment there. And you can see her name is here at the bottom of this image. But here's what it says. It says, by 18 months, babies have heard 4,380 hours of spoken language, and we don't expect them to be fluent speakers yet, right? Because nobody expects an 18-month-old to be a fluent speaker. If AAC learners only see symbols modeled for communication twice a week for 20 minutes, which is what my therapy setup is at my elementary school. I see most of my students for various reasons twice a week for 20 minutes. It will take them 84 years for them to have the same exposure to aided language as an 18-month-old has a spoken language. 84 years to get them to be a not yet fluent speaker of language. This is literally printed out at my desk, at work, at school, taped various places in my life, because I think it just paints a really good picture of what not only the importance of AAC and aided language is, but the importance of integration and bombardment and generalization and all of the things you can call using it all day, every day, all the time. And so that's just a good one to kind of keep in the back of your pocket. I will take all of these slides and make them into a fancy PDF for you later, and I will send them to somebody who knows more about technology than I do, and you'll have access to them when we're finished. So is this piece of information just for high-tech users? Absolutely not. Core vocabulary happens everywhere, across all ability levels, across all communication levels, in all the different kinds of methods. So no, this is not just a lot of information about kids who are using the latest and greatest high-tech devices. So really quickly, I'm going to give you, I don't know, a minute maybe. I'm sure you have your cell phone out or are sitting at your desk with a sticky note next to you or whatever, and I want you to just jot down a 2 to 3 sentence note to a friend or a family member relaying some kind of information. So I explain this as that note that you leave, run to the grocery store, picking up the kids from baseball, be home at 6. Or call your mom back, she won't quit calling, she's driving me nuts, or some kind. And I know it's the internet, and especially if you're watching this on YouTube on the replay, you're like, I'm not really going to do that. No, it's important, and it comes back later. So jot down your sentence. If you want to be really brave, you can stick it in the track 1 message thread. That way we all can see credibility-wise that you actually made a quick note, but just take a little bit of time to type that out or write that out or jot it down or whatever it is. I'll give you, 30 seconds. So if it's quiet, don't think your computer broke. Although I could talk for 30 more seconds. Okay, I'll stop. Some more dog crunching. It's good. All right, so like I said, you're gonna need that 2 to 3 sentence note and just a couple of slides. So quickly, we're going to go over, for if you have done all of the sessions in this track or other tracks, first of all, you're the MVP of the day or the week. We're quickly going to go over the definition of core and fringe vocabulary. Again, not that I don't know that you don't know this, or I don't think you don't know this, but I think it's really helpful to have a very layman's term definition of what core vocabulary and fringe vocabulary is, because I know this because I do it all day long. And I know you know this because you do it all day long. But when I find myself sitting in a case conference or talking to a classroom teacher or having a conversation with a parent who's new to any kind of AAC, and I go, oh, core vocabulary, it's just, well, but it, and I sound like the most disfluent, uneducated person in the room. So core vocabulary, and you'll see this reference later where I got this information. Core vocabulary is typically defined as a small set of common words that are used across settings. So we see these present themselves as verbs, pronouns, adjectives. So the takeaway from that, to make it even simpler, is a small set used across various settings. Now, the flip side of that, obviously, is fringe vocabulary. And fringe vocabulary is a large set of uncommon words used on rare occasion. So you can see, I'm going to make you dizzy and flip back and forth here. So you can see the difference, even in their definition, of core and fringe vocabulary. Core is a small set, they're common, they're used across settings. Fringe is a large set, they're uncommon, and they're used on rare occasions. Fringe vocabulary, we usually see present itself as nouns. So when we're talking about Doc McStuffins, or Pringles, or my purple blanket with the giraffe face and the bottom ear missing. The very specific, now obviously that was not a single word, but it's that very specific set of vocabulary that we don't use all that often, but still carries meaning and still has a lot of value. I just looked down I have track one open on my phone, and I just looked down and I'm seeing all these people saying things about like going to dinner, and I was like, what's happening? And then I remembered that you're all writing notes, so that's good. So why are we teaching core vocabulary? Who cares? Why is this a hill that we're willing to die on? Core vocabulary carries meaning. We talk about in research the 80-20 rule. 80% of most of what we say consists of core vocabulary, and the rest of what's left, that 20%, is fringe. So that's when we're talking about, Louis Vuitton shoes, and that's when we're talking about Pepsi instead of drinking and wearing and walking. It makes up a huge chunk of what we as verbal speech users say. So if I want a child who's using communication or alternative communication to, you're missing my finger air quotes here, sound like or look like typical language, I'm going to give them most of what my language consists of. So I'm going to teach them core vocabulary. Core is also used across settings and circumstances. We just talked about that in that last definition. Core vocabulary, faster payoff, and generalization. And this last bullet these last two kind of go together. Language acquisition. If we think about early language therapy. So I spent about a year-ish, year and a half, almost 2 years actually, doing early intervention, working Indiana has a program called First Steps. And so it's our birth to 3 in home therapy. And so I spent 2 years in First Steps. When you think about those first words that we teach kids, language delayed or not, what words are we teaching them? Go, stop, want, mind, potty, all done. Those kinds of heavy meaning words, because there's faster payoff, and they're used more widely than lemonade or than marshmallows. Those words that carry meaning and have importance, but they don't work as well. So if you have a limited set of vocabulary, you're going to teach high importance words. Can core and fringe vocabulary be friends? Absolutely. They absolutely can. You just have to be careful. You have to know what you're going after. If I have a kid in therapy who Doc McStuffins is apparently the only cartoon I can think of right now. Who is super motivated by, I don't know, Care Bears. Sure, why not? Am I going to have her request to watch Care Bears for initial buy-in? You better believe I am. Am I going to have her tell me if we're watching Care Bears on YouTube, am I going to have her tell me to make it go? Yep. Stop. Yep. All done Care Bears. More Care Bears. When I'm going to use that stuff because that's just, I kind of feel like speech therapy 101 a little bit, or working with kids 101. I mean, you're all about the buy-in. So your core vocabulary and your fringe vocabulary, they can be friends. They can hang out in therapy together. You just have to know where you're going with therapy. And I think you have to be able to justify what you're doing and why you're doing it. These are a couple of lists of some really great core vocabulary words. The top list is taken from language samples of toddlers, and I'll have to double check the exact age ranges that they use, or you can Google it. If you just type any of these into Google, they'll show up. But they took some language samples and found the most frequently occurring core vocabulary words and put them in a list, which is awesome. I remember it was actually, I think even this school year that I was looking for core vocabulary resources, and I came across these lists. And you'll have to understand that I'm the only speech therapist in my elementary school, and I have an insanely high caseload, but whatever. And I found these lists, and I instantly started texting all of my speech therapy friends and emailing my coworkers. And I was like, guys, did you know these things existed? And they were like, yeah, we did. But I was just alone in my little office early one morning and was kind of having a heyday because I felt like I just struck gold. The second list, 333 alphabetized preschool core words. It's just such a gold mine of information and such a wealth. They are really great for taking those lists and going, all right, you're telling me that I need to teach this kid core vocabulary. Sure, fine, I'm on board. The heck do I start? That's when I pull out these lists and go, all right, what's going to make the most difference in your day right now? Or what's going to make the most difference at home for you right now? If you're not familiar with the website Practical AAC, I'm pretty sure I'm on there every day, at least once a week during the school year. Such a huge wealth of information. And I mean, core vocabulary calendars for every month of the year. I mean, just about anything you could ask for. So those are three that I've actually printed off those top two lists and several things from Practical AAC. So if you don't know them, you should become familiar with them. All right, now your turn. Take those lists, take that note that you wrote to your person, that note that you jotted down either in the track one chat room, or if you're watching this on replay, on the sticky note on your desk or on your phone or whatever, and just take a second and glance and see how much of your note is core vocabulary and how much of your note is fringe vocabulary, and see if what you wrote follows that 80-20 rule. Was 80% of what you wrote core vocabulary, or was it fringe vocabulary? And then you can think about for the rest of the day what that means about the way you communicate. I don't think it implies anything, but it's just interesting to see how that 80-20 rule really applies. So you can take a look at that. I'm just here scrolling through some of these. Here's a good one. Went for a ride, be back soon. Lots of core vocabulary in that one. Don't forget to feed the dog and water the plants. See you Tuesday. A little bit of fringe vocabulary, but lots of good core vocabulary. I'll be at work late. Check the fridge for dinner and don't wait for me. How many times have I left that note? I'll be at work late. I'll be at home soon. Love you. Please water the plants. I'm at the store. All of these things are perfect. All right, so we talked a little bit ago in the learning objectives, working with classroom teachers. In my building, I told you I have 3 self-contained classrooms And so I have 3 very different classroom teachers. So let me see if I can paint you a quick picture about what each of my classrooms kind of looks like, as far as the way the teacher has created kind of a culture of AAC in their classroom. Teacher number 1 has been teaching for several years, I'd say less than 10, and is approaching middle-aged, so familiar with technology, owns an iPhone, but that's kind of about it. Teacher number 2 has not been teaching long at all, and is not very comfortable around technology. And teacher number 3 has been teaching for a very long time, and we'll leave it at that. Has been teaching for a very long time, is not comfortable with technology, maybe owns a cell phone, has been doing her thing for a very long time, is very good at what she does, excellent teacher, lovely person, and is just very established in the way they run their curriculum and the way they run their classroom. When I came to my elementary school, there was no assistive technology in any way, shape, or form being used in the building. This particular building I've been in, this will be my 4th year, and I currently have 6 children in that building on high-tech devices, and about 3 kids using some form of picture communication. And that's not to say that I'm this big superhero that came in and saved the day, but I just kind of want you to get a little bit of a picture of what my AAC situation looks like from a speech pathologist perspective, or maybe even from a parent perspective. If a parent's looking into, our self-contained program, and through the lens of, my child already has an established communication device, or my child will potentially need a communication device or some kind of alternative communication, what's that culture like? That's kind of how our program is set up right now. So the important thing, I think, to remember through it all, and listen, this year especially, I feel like I have been through the trenches with with alternative communication in my building. And there are days that it has been literal sunshine and roses, and there have days where I've just wanted to leave my keys on my desk and be like, you guys can figure this out on your own. And I just say that to say, because I think we've all been there, or on some level of that spectrum. The end of the day, and somebody said this to me once, and I wrote it down, teachers are human learners, just like our students are. Treat them as such. I was talking with a coworker one afternoon when I was particularly frustrated with the situation, and she kind of looked at me, and she's a good friend, and so she can say this, but she looked at me and she said, Rachel, she said, it's your job to teach different thinkers. Just treat them like a different thinker, because they are, because we're all different thinkers. And not to say that your classroom teachers or my classroom teachers or your special ed teachers or whatever have cognitive impairments, because that's not necessarily the case. But my job as a speech pathologist is to, well, among such, generate different learning and engage different kind of learning and not teach everybody the same way. So why on earth am I just constantly bombarding people with information in a way that makes sense to me? So that was kind of a good eye-opener for me. When we talk about the approaches to learning, visual, auditory, verbal, and kinesthetic learners, all of your teachers and all of your staff and all of your paras and all of your principals and all of your school board members and all of your special ed teachers are going to fall into probably one of these categories. And there's different ways to make AAC feel less scary to each of these kinds of learners. So we'll break this down here for a minute. Break it down. Visual learners. Visual learners, you have to model. You have to let them see that what you're doing makes a difference. That means sitting at circle time with a kiddo and modeling how he can do days of the week on his communication device or with his picture symbol set up. That means you're sitting at circle time. They have to see the payoff, and we all know it's there. And we all believe it's there because it's what we do and it's what we believe in. We just have to make others see it too. There are these handouts that I made, and they're in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. And if you want them, you can have them. And if not, you could probably make something very similar without the cute clip art. But these are handouts that I've made specifically for classroom teachers. They're great for visual learners that cover a variety of areas. You can see the ones up front, core and French vocabulary. The one to your right is just kind of some general, like a student in your classroom has an AAC device, now what? One of them goes through some of like the terminology that we use, because you all know we speak an acronym even more specific than our special ed teacher friends. Some troubleshooting tips, just things like that. And these are things that even if I have a teacher or a child with a communication device, or a teacher who has that student year after year, in August or the beginning of the school year, I'll print these off again, because you know how much teachers love paper in their mailbox. But I'll print these off again and just put a little sticky on it and say, hey, just a refresher, and stick a piece of chocolate on there so they're not mad that I put handouts in their box. But these are something that I utilize a lot. And I'm so excited and so proud. One day I went into a classroom where I have a couple AAC users, and these were laminated in each like assistant's cubby. So not only the kids were using it, but she was making her assistants and her paraprofessionals use it. And I about bought her dinner because not just because I'd made them, but just because she was sharing that information with paraprofessionals, and that really is such a rare gift. The auditory learners really need conversation. They need to sit down and they need to understand the reasons why they should be implementing core vocabulary, let alone AAC, into their classrooms. Sorry, I'm taking a little drink there. They're the ones who need to hear the reasons. They need to hear the parent's story. They need to be able just to really discuss and get into some good conversation. And listen, I get it that not every teacher has the 6 hours it would take me to sit down and explain why I love AAC so much, and why it matters just so much. But these are the teachers who are going to need, maybe it's just that frequent, every 1 minute conversations every week, or, they'll probably get sick of you passing them in the hallway because, you're just reinforcing, man, little Timmy did such a great job today. When I saw him for speech, he did this. You guys must be working really hard on that. And really kind of having those good things to meet those auditory learning needs. Our verbal learners, need to be able to talk about. So the auditory learners need to be able to hear it, and the verbal learners need to be able to understand it and to be able to express it themselves. So again, that's going to look a lot like discussion, but it's really creating that space for them to be able to explain, and then to be able to go through and really be able to make that knowledge their own. And as we go through these, you probably know what kind of learner you are. And so you'll see yourself in that and say, oh yeah, well, I'm a verbal learner. I wonder if, Mr. So-and-so is too, or, oh gosh, I didn't even think about, I totally understand what it's like to be a kinesthetic learner because, my kid is. And so why have I not applied that to school? And it's not that I, again, have brought in like some wonderful new research, but it's just, I think it's just looking at it through a fresh lens that has really made a difference for me. And then our kinesthetic physical learners, let them do it. I feel like so much good happens when you hand a teacher or a para or a principal or a parent even a device and say, here, check it out, see what it's all about. Their first response is always, well, I don't want to break it, because if it's a high-tech device, it was probably expensive. And we always, have the conversation of, listen, it was made to be loved. It was made to be used. They're a little more durable than you might think. If they can break it, then I guess we need to have another conversation. But it's just, I feel like such a huge barrier is crossed when they can get their hands on it and they can feel more ownership of what it looks like, what it feels like, what it, what the steps feel like, what the layout looks like, or what what your PEC system looks like, and let them get in and let them figure out the card organization, and really just letting that ownership happen is such a really crucial piece. And for teacher number 1 in my building, it was when she started to, the specific kid in her classroom is using PRC's LAMP program, which I really love. But when she was able to sit down with his device and figure out that it wasn't scary and it wasn't, this, really nice porcelain thing that we just had to keep on the wall and, ooh, nobody touch it because it's so-and-so's talker. Once we figured out it can get down and dirty with us at recess and take it to art class. I don't care, paint will wash off. It's okay if he can touch it with messy hands. Then her willingness to integrate it into what they were doing became so much greater. So miscellaneous items that didn't fit anywhere into any of those other things. Teacher approaches, we sit here and we obviously see the end goal. We see a child who's completely fluent in AAC, who's a proficient user, who is helping program other kids' devices. Only see a really overwhelming amount of work and things that are foreign and things that are not comfortable. And if I think about the way I am with my speech room, it's kind of a little bit my domain, and you can roll your eyes at that, and that's fine. But I think you know what I'm talking about. This is my zone. Get out of my zone. I know what I'm doing here. I'm comfortable here. I'm safe here. Even just like down to the, minutia of my classroom. Not that I'm not one to make messes, because listen, my room was always a mess. But this is my jam. And so for them, teaching, that's their thing, and they're very good at it. And then when you introduce something new that they're not comfortable with, you are upsetting all of the fruit in the fruit basket. So you have to start small. You have to. And that kind of leads into the resistant teacher too, talking about what kind of teacher is just shut down when you say, hey, little Timmy is moving into your class in December, and he uses communication device because we just jump in and we're excited about it and we're ready and we can't wait to get our hands on it, get it programmed and check out what's going on. And they have completely shut you off. You see exactly what they're thinking on their face. They're the ones who have devices and book bags all day long because for whatever reason, they're not going to use it. And so it's that for whatever reason that you have to look at. We deal with function of behavior all day long. And so all you really need to do is take a look at the function of that resistant behavior. Are they resistant because they're avoiding it? Is it an escape avoid behavior? Are they looking out for ways that it could become a problem because they don't understand it? They're not comfortable around it. It's too much. They've never done it before. Is it a control issue? Are you not going to be, again, you're missing my finger quotes here, the speech therapist who just comes in and says, all right, this is what we're going to do with little Susie now. And that wasn't on my lesson plan, and that's not what I think is best for her. And so I'm not going to do that because it's a control-based behavior. Looking at what that resistance really is telling you is such an eye-opener to how you can best start to work your way into that resistance and really understand why that device never comes out of his book bag and why her PEC's pictures are, in their container or in her pocket or, wherever, just not used or not integrated. And of course it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Just as we know with working with children and doing what we've done for as long as we have, you really have to be in it for the long haul. And that sometimes means in the classroom as well. So I tell you all of these things and you say, Rachel, listen, that's nice. But do you know how busy I am? Ain't nobody got time for that, okay? I do know how busy you are because I'm just as busy. But I think you have to look at your busy / investment balance and knowing what's going to make the most difference. And that again just plays into, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And the good news is most of the time we have these children on our caseload 5, 6 years, maybe more, maybe less, depending on, how old they are when they get their AAC system up and running. So yeah, I do know how busy you are, and I know how easy it is to sit, especially because we're in the summer and a lot of us haven't been in the classroom for a while. And so everything seems way more achievable now that we're not in the middle of the school year, when you feel like you might be drowning a little bit. So I get it. But it's so worth it. Even if you can take one of those things, and let that change the way you interact in the classroom, you've gone miles. All right, so let's talk about what this looks like in the classroom, and kind of coming off of that whole conversation about teachers and working with teachers. The first ticket that I've used that's been really, really helpful is collaboration. There were several times this school year that I went to we call it functional skills in Indiana, our functional skills teachers collaboration. We sat down and we really kind of got to get into the dirty of what their lesson plans look like. And I took a very fly on the wall approach. Part of that's my personality, but part of that just came from, I don't want to encroach. I don't want to take over, because I can also do that. I don't want to dominate here. I just want to see what's happening in your collaboration, and I want to see how I can be a part of that and how AAC can be a part of that. So here's a couple of ways that collaboration looks like. Field trips. Listen, if you have the flexibility and the ability and a gracious administration to let you go on field trips, I love going on field trips. It's such a natural way for AAC to become a part of what happens outside of the four walls of the school building in the name of education. Getting a hold of weekly curriculum. Looking at their literacy collection, their selection, what can you integrate into, what can you push into? Special area classes, I feel like these are one of the areas, at least in my building, that AAC gets overlooked the most. And I think a little bit it's everybody's fault, including my own. But art and gym and music and library and media center and computer lab and all the different ways, that we have special area classes. What does alternative communication look like in those settings? And so it's really just getting elbow deep in what's happening in their day, because like I told you, goodness, almost 40 minutes ago, I can do some really cool things in my therapy room. But if it's not making a difference in their classroom, if it's not making a difference at lunch, if it's not making a difference in music, then what am I doing? So really getting down and dirty with some of these things is a great way to start making core vocabulary specifically happen in the classroom. This is another thing that I love, and I can post the links to some of these, although I see some of you are kind of rocking that out for me, which is so great. This is a classroom core word wall. So in my general education classrooms, they have they have sight word walls, I guess, that children use. Well, you know what a sight word wall is. I won't explain it to you. But this is a core vocabulary word wall that can be set up in a couple different ways. It's from my friend Stephanie, and you can find it also on Teachers Pay Teachers. She's Mrs. D's Corner. But this is a really cool thing that, man, if you can get this in a classroom on a wall, you're doing something right, my friend. Even at the least, to have this hanging on your speech word wall, it just makes core vocabulary present. And I think a lot of what integrating into the classroom is getting really creative with ways to keep core vocabulary in front of an AAC user or in front of any kid. I've yet to meet a kid that is hurt by extra exposure to core vocabulary and picture symbols, because even if they are verbal, or even if they don't, quote on your again, with the finger quotes, I'm having a good time with them today, need those kinds of things, this extra exposure is wonderful. And here you can see at the top, they're even split apart by sound. So you're pulling in some literacy and you're pulling in some, phonemic and phonological awarenesses and awarenesses. Is that a word? I think it is. Anyway, so I love this word wall. It just makes it super visual and keeps AAC in front, or keeps core vocabulary in front of our users. There's a closer look just at what those big letters look like. And I love them, and I have them hanging in my speech room. And one day I will have them hanging in all of the special ed classrooms in my elementary school. One day. This is a picture of one of the desks or the center tables at or in a classroom in my building. These visuals are just taped. You can see right next to a student's name tag, and they are just there for quick access. This particular user is a high-tech user, but I think there's absolute value in keeping just some good quick access core vocabulary right at the ready. So whether he has left his device across the room or it's charging, or whatever reason he would need to use a low-tech system, this is sitting right by his name tag. He knows where it will be all of the time. These are also very easy to change out. So if you, he's mastered 10 vocabulary words or 10 core vocabulary words. These are words that I typically will keep as words they are already mastered and using functionally. I typically won't introduce a new or emerging core vocabulary word into this strip just for accuracy's sake. But for a AAC user with, maybe a higher cognitive ability, you could, to see if generalization is really happening outside of the device, you could throw a new word or two on here and see how they manipulate that. But this is nothing fancy. This is, I took symbols and put them on a piece of, or printed them off in just a little grid format, printed them off and laminated them and stuck some masking tape on it and slapped it on his desk. Because while therapy is obviously important, it doesn't always have to be fancy. The students who sit at his table have also started using his visual as well. They are, I think, for the most part, all verbal, but they see, little Mikey using it and they think, that looks fun. And so they've started using it as well, which is really neat. Another classroom visual, this is a lanyard ring from my friend Maureen. She is a blogger and Teachers Pay Teachers seller as well. She's the Speech Bubble SLP. And again, if one of you doesn't beat me to it, I will get a link to this. But this is just a lanyard ring, and it is really thorough, which is great because it gives you access to a lot of words. But again, this is something, God love you, Maureen. This is something else if you're using a very specific picture set, or if you're using real pictures that you could assemble yourself. I like the way this is color coded and it's done for me. So this is the one that I use. But this just hooks onto my lanyard. It hooks onto teacher's lanyard. And again, it's a quick access, we're walking in the hallway, or we are, out at recess and my device has died, or, some extrinsic thing that would happen that we wouldn't have access to a high-tech device for whatever reason. I'm sure this is very familiar to many of you who are using PECs as a primary form of communication already. But that's another option that I love. It's at the ready, and I can change it and edit it and grow it and take it down and just really customize it as much as I want, which is huge for me. This is the last thing I have to show you, and then we'll spend the last little time for some questions. And things like that. And if not, we'll let you go early. But this is a way that I have started using to really start putting core vocabulary in front of teachers' faces specifically, or paraprofessionals specifically. If I had $1 for every time that I went to pick up a kiddo for speech or ran across somebody at quiet time or whatever, and had a conversation with a teacher, and they said, yeah, you know, we were looking for the word whatever that you told us to work on. You know, we're looking for open, and we just couldn't find it. So, I mean, it must not be there. Well, must not be there no more. These are, again, it's just computer paper. I took some symbols, slapped some fonts on it. So at the top it says, my core word is open. So for my very beginning user, we'll do 1 core word a week. And so, or 1 core word that I really want them to practice in the classroom. We'll do more than 1 a week. But this, it's hard to see. And if we were here in person, I would show you what they really look like. But this right here is just a, like a book box bin. Whoops, go back. It's just a book box bin. It's just one of those clear labels. I got them off Amazon. It's a pocket label. I got them off Amazon. I think I got like 10 for really cheap. And then I just measured them and made picture squares accordingly. So it says my core word is open. You know, I have a whole set. So my core word is go. My core word is stop. My core word is want. My core word is more. And it says, here's how I find it. And so there down below, I will show the progression. Again, this child's using the LAMP program, and he's on a multi-step sequence. And so I will use that. So there's really no reason that they could look at me and say, oh, we weren't really sure how to find you know, lunch. And so, well, I mean, we just didn't do it. It's a good visual reminder for the sequence for the user, as well as the teacher, the paraprofessional, whoever is assisting or spending the most time with this child. This is an OtterBox iPad case. He is currently using LAMP on the iPad. And these are just adhesive pockets. And so they peel right off, not right off. I mean, it's not like he's going to pull it off anytime soon. But they are removable and do no damage to the device. If you are not using a form of a device, or you know, if a parent really just doesn't want that on the kid's device for whatever reason, I have also used these luggage tags. Again, these are just clear luggage tags that I've gotten off Amazon, and then just adapted the size of these cards to say the same thing. And this piece right here wraps around the handle of like a device with a handle, or you know, can wrap through or attach to a piece on a mount. You know, if you have a child who's using a device that's mounted, and the like. So those are how I use those, and those have been really effective. I have one other, he's a higher user. He's a little bit older kid on my caseload, and I've actually moved this square over here. I don't know why it keeps doing that. And so he has 2. So he has 2 core words that I really want them using in the classroom for that week. And then I just switch them out as we work in therapy. So I will put, I'll put one over here, and I'll put one over here. That way we're using more than one. All right, we have made it. We have a couple minutes left for questions. I've seen some things pop up here. So let's kind of, let's talk this out. What do you guys still want to know?
Yeah, go ahead. I saw someone earlier that had a question about when you're starting with core vocabulary with someone who is young, are there specific words you would suggest starting with?
I would stick with age appropriate vocabulary, because again, if I think of if I just think about a child who's communicating verbally or through sign, what words they would typically use. Some of those lists are great. That top, I could go back and find it, but you all can rewind, of what, maybe it's off the toddler list, or what's cognitively appropriate for that child. Also, what words are going to get me the highest payoff? Like, again, if I'm teaching a child, who is low verbal, what words would I start with? Cause and effect words that are going to help him buy into that back and forth of communication, or her. So I'd start with, just a handful of really high reward vocabulary words, or high intrinsic motivation words.
Perfect. Okay, another question. How do you have one set of symbols in the same classroom? Is there any symbol confusion for students?
That's a good question. Because at least currently, because I have initiated alternative communication with most of my students, I've been able to have a little bit more say in what symbol set they use. I think what I would do is I would start with, so if I have Mike and Molly who are in the same classroom and using different symbol sets, I would look at who's going to be the more flexible of the two. If Molly is able to use real pictures, black and white pictures, colored pictures, she understands, she can use, the PRC symbols, whatever. She's really versatile. But Mike is really just most comfortable or most successful with real pictures, then I'm probably going to use real pictures. As long as it's not hindering Molly in any way. If she's still using them to communicate, I feel like it's not going to hurt her to use real pictures. When I do some pull-out therapy, I might try and mix up her visuals just to make sure that we really have language acquisition and we don't have just memorization. But I think I would use, I don't want to say lower because I hate that word, but I would use the child who needs the most consistency and the most support. I would stick with their symbol set and make it as universal in the classroom as possible. That's a really good question.
Good question. All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate your presentation. Thanks for all who attended. And we'll move on to the next session. But if you have questions or things that you'd like to ask Rachel, feel free to continue to post them in Slack. And if she gets a chance, she'll take a look at them there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, and we'll see you at the next session, everyone.